I always knew I was Elena's second choice. I just didn't realize I was also the punchline. The joke landed 2 weeks before our wedding, at Jake Carter's penthouse during what was supposed to be a casual dinner with our closest friends. Elena had 3 glasses of wine, her magic number for truth-telling, and decided to share a hilarious anecdote about how she'd almost picked Jake instead of me back in college. "I mean, look at him," she said, gesturing at Jake with her wine glass, liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "He's objectively hotter, right? God, I should have picked you, Jake." Everyone laughed, even me, because what else do you do when your fiancé ranks you below your best friend in front of a room full of people? You laugh, make a self-deprecating joke, and file it away in the part of your brain labeled things that will definitely come up in therapy someday. Jake grinned his quarterback grin, all teeth and confidence, and clinked his glass against Elena's. "Your loss, babe. I'd have treated you right." More laughter. I excused myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection for 5 full minutes, wondering when exactly I'd become the guy everyone felt comfortable mocking to his face. My name is Nick Rowan. I'm 38 years old, a structural engineer with my own modest firm, and I've spent most of my adult life being the reliable guy. The best man at weddings, never the groom, the designated driver, the friend who helps you move. I'm gym fit but not model handsome, smart but not brilliant, successful but not wealthy. I'm the Honda Civic of men, dependable, practical, and utterly forgettable. Elena Moretti was supposed to change all that. She was stunning in that effortless way that made other women hate her and men walk into lampposts. A PR executive at one of Boston's top firms, she moved through the world like she owned it, all sharp suits and sharper wit. When she agreed to marry me, I felt like I'd won the lottery. Now, standing in Jake's marble bathroom with its heated floors and gold-plated fixtures, I wondered if I'd just been the consolation prize. The suspicions started small. Elena working late more often, her phone face down on every surface, a new perfume I didn't recognize, the way she'd flinch when I touched her unexpectedly, like she'd been somewhere else in her mind. I'm an engineer. I solve problems by gathering data, analyzing patterns, and drawing logical conclusions. So I started paying attention. 3 days after Jake's dinner party, I found a necklace in the back seat of Jake's car, a delicate gold chain with a small diamond pendant. I'd borrowed his BMW to pick up lumber for a project, and there it was, glinting in the afternoon sun. Elena had a necklace exactly like it. She'd claimed she lost it at the gym 2 months ago. I pocketed the necklace and said nothing. A week later, I was working late at my office when Frank, my business partner and father figure, knocked on my door with 2 beers and a concerned expression. "You look like hell, kid," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Frank was 55, built like a refrigerator, and had been in the construction business since before I was born. He'd taken me under his wing when I started the firm 5 years ago, teaching me everything about the business that engineering school hadn't covered. "Wedding stress," I said, accepting the beer. "Bullshit. I've seen wedding stress. This is something else." He took a long pull from his bottle. "You want to tell me what's really going on?" I wanted to. God, I wanted to unload everything. The joke at the party, the necklace, the growing certainty that my fiancé was sleeping with my best friend. But saying it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that. "Just second thoughts," I said. "Normal stuff." Frank studied me with the kind of look that suggested he knew exactly what kind of bullshit I was selling. "You know what I learned in my 2 divorces? Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is." That night, I couldn't sleep. Elena was beside me, her back turned, breathing the steady rhythm of genuine sleep. I stared at the ceiling and thought about all the little things I'd been ignoring. The way she'd started going to the gym at odd hours, how she'd become protective of her laptop. The time I'd called her office and her assistant had seemed confused about where Elena actually was. I grabbed my phone and opened Instagram. Elena posted constantly. It was part of her job as a PR exec, but I rarely paid attention. Now I scrolled back through months of posts, looking for patterns. There. In the background of a photo from 3 months ago, supposedly taken at a client dinner, I could see the reflection in a window. Jake, sitting across from her, his hand on the table in a position that suggested it had just been covering hers. I zoomed in, enhanced, analyzed. They were at Sorellina, the Italian place in Back Bay. I knew because I'd taken Elena there for our anniversary. It was expensive, romantic, and definitely not the kind of place you went for a business dinner unless you were trying to impress someone or seduce them. I put the phone down and stared at Elena's sleeping form. My hands were shaking. The next morning, I called in sick to work, something I never did, and followed Elena. She left the house at 7:30, dressed in a charcoal suit that made her look like she could negotiate world peace before lunch. I waited 5 minutes, then tailed her in my truck. She didn't go to her office. Instead, she drove to the Mandarin Oriental and parked in the garage. I watched from across the street as she walked into the lobby, confident and purposeful. 10 minutes later, Jake arrived in his BMW, threw his keys at the valet, and followed the same path. They were in there for 2 hours. I sat in my truck, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The reliable guy, the best friend, the second choice, that version of Nick Rowan was fading, and something colder was taking his place. When Elena came home that evening, I was in the kitchen making dinner like nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," she said, kissing my cheek. She smelled like hotel soap and guilt. "How was your day?" "Productive," I said, stirring pasta sauce. "How was yours?" "Exhausting. Back-to-back meetings all day." She poured herself a glass of wine. "I'm going to take a quick shower before dinner." I listened to the water run and thought about confronting her, but confrontation would lead to denials, tears, maybe an admission, probably a breakup. The wedding would be called off. I'd be humiliated in front of everyone we knew. No. If I was going down, I was taking them with me. That's when I remembered Cassie. Cassie Moretti was Elena's twin sister, and she was everything Elena wasn't. Where Elena was polished and ambitious, Cassie was earthy and sarcastic. She taught art at a community college, lived in a converted warehouse in Somerville, and had the kind of natural beauty that didn't require a team of stylists to maintain. We'd always gotten along. At family dinners, while Elena networked and Jake held court, Cassie and I would end up in the kitchen, making fun of everyone else. She had a sharp wit and a sharper eye for bullshit. I'd always thought she was wasted on her family. I called her the next day. "Nick?" She sounded surprised. "Is everything okay? Is Elena—" "Elena's fine," I said. "I need to talk to you about something. Can we meet?" There was a pause. This sounds ominous. It is. We met at a coffee shop in Cambridge, far enough from Elena's usual haunts that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. Cassie arrived in paint-stained jeans and an oversized sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked concerned. "Okay, you're scaring me," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "What's going on?" I told her everything. The joke at the party, the necklace, the hotel, the months of suspicions, and the certainty I now felt. I laid it all out like evidence at a trial, watching her face go from concern to shock to something that looked like rage. When I finished, she sat back and exhaled slowly. That absolute bastard. "I need to know something," I said. "Did you know?" Cassie met my eyes. "I suspected. Elena's always been Elena. She can't help herself when it comes to men like Jake. Alpha types, you know? But I didn't have proof, and honestly, I hoped I was wrong." She leaned forward. "What are you gonna do?" "I'm going to marry you instead." The words hung in the air between us. Cassie blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" 2 weeks from now, I'm supposed to walk down the aisle with your sister." Instead, I want to walk down it with you, in front of everyone, her friends, her family, her colleagues, Jake. I want to watch her face when she realizes what's happening. Cassie stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face, the kind of smile that suggested she'd been waiting her whole life for someone to suggest something this deliciously vindictive. "You're insane," she said. "Probably. Elena will lose her mind. That's the idea. Everyone will think we're having an affair. Let them." She tapped her fingers on the table, thinking, "What's in it for me? Revenge against a sister who's always thought she was better than you. A front row seat to the most spectacular public humiliation in Boston social history and—" I paused. "Maybe a chance to see if we actually work together. We always got along better than Elena and I did." Cassie laughed, a genuine sound of delight. "God, you're serious." "Completely." She extended her hand across the table. "Okay, Nick Rowan, let's blow up your wedding." The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in deception. I'd always been honest to a fault, the kind of guy who returned extra change to cashiers and felt guilty about white lies. Turns out, when properly motivated, I was a natural at subterfuge. Elena suspected nothing. Why would she? I was reliable Nick, predictable Nick, second choice Nick. I went through the wedding preparations with mechanical precision, confirming vendors, finalizing the seating chart, picking up my tuxedo. I smiled at her family dinners, laughed at Jake's jokes, and played the role of excited groom so convincingly I almost believed it myself. Meanwhile, Cassie and I were planning the heist of the century. We met in secret, usually at her warehouse studio, surrounded by her paintings and the smell of turpentine. She'd make coffee in a French press while we plotted, her eyes bright with the thrill of conspiracy. "The dress is going to be a problem," she said one evening, sketching out a timeline on a large pad of paper. "Elena's is custom. I can't exactly show up in the same one." "You're the same size, right?" "Close enough, but her dress is this whole princess ball gown situation. Very Elena, not very me." "So wear something different, something better." Cassie grinned. "I like the way you think." She found a dress at a vintage boutique in the South End, a simple, elegant sheath in ivory silk that made her look like a 1940s movie star. It cost $300, a fraction of what Elena's dress had cost, and it was perfect. The officiant was trickier. Reverend Patricia Morrison had known Elena's family for years and wasn't going to just swap brides without questions, so I told her a version of the truth. "Patricia, I need to talk to you about something sensitive," I said, meeting her at her office 3 days before the wedding. "I've discovered that Elena has been unfaithful, with my best man." Patricia's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, sympathy, and something that might have been satisfaction. She'd never particularly liked Elena, I realized. Too much pride, not enough humility. "Oh, Nick, I'm so sorry. Are you calling off the wedding?" "Not exactly, I'm switching brides. Elena's twin sister Cassie has agreed to marry me instead. Same ceremony, same time, different bride." Patricia stared at me. "That's highly unusual." "I know. But Elena doesn't know yet. Nobody does except Cassie and now you. I want it to be a surprise." "A surprise?" Patricia repeated slowly. "Nick, this is going to cause a scene." "I'm counting on it." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Elena Moretti always did need to be taken down a peg. I'll do it. But you owe me a very large donation to the church building fund." Done. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy with Jake. We'd been friends since college, roommates for 2 years, best man at each other's imagined weddings since we were drunk sophomores. He'd been there when my dad passed, when I started my business, through every major moment of my adult life. And he'd been sleeping with my fiancée for months. "You nervous?" he asked at my bachelor party, which he'd organized at a downtown sports bar. It was just the two of us and a handful of guys from the firm. Jake had his arm around my shoulders, beer in hand, playing the role of supportive best friend. Cold feet are normal, man. Everyone gets them. I looked at him, really looked at him. Jake Carter, former college quarterback, now a finance bro pulling in $500,000 a year. Handsome in that aggressive masculine way that made women stupid and men competitive. He'd always been the center of attention, the guy everyone wanted to be or be with. And he still wasn't satisfied. He had to take my fiancée, too. No cold feet, I said, clinking my beer against his. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That's what I like to hear. He squeezed my shoulder. Elena's a lucky woman. I smiled. You have no idea. The night before the wedding, Elena stayed at her parents' house in Brookline. Tradition dictated we shouldn't see each other until the ceremony. I used the time to move half my belongings to Cassie's warehouse. Not everything, just enough that I wouldn't have to go back. Cassie helped me carry boxes up the industrial stairs, her face flushed with exertion and excitement. Last chance to back out, she said, setting down a box of books. We could call this whole thing off, and you could just leave Elena like a normal person. Where's the fun in that? She laughed. You've changed, Nick Rowan. 2 weeks ago, you were the nice guy. Now you're the guy who crashes his own wedding. 2 weeks ago, I didn't know my fiancé was screwing my best friend. Fair point. She grabbed 2 beers from her fridge and handed me one. So what happens after tomorrow? We're going to be married. Have you thought about that? I had. More than I probably should have. The truth was, the more time I spent with Cassie, the more I realized how wrong Elena had been for me. Cassie was real in a way her sister never was. She didn't perform for an audience or calculate every word. She was just herself, sarcastic, talented, and surprisingly kind when she thought no one was looking. I figure we see how it goes, I said. Worst case, we get it annulled in a few months. Best case. Best case what? Best case we actually work. Cassie studied me over the rim of her beer bottle. You know what? I think we might. The wedding was at the Four Seasons because of course it was. Elena had insisted on the most expensive venue in Boston, and I'd agreed because I was still playing the role of accommodating fiancé. The ballroom was decorated in white and gold, with enough flowers to supply a small funeral home. 300 guests, a string quartet, and a photographer who cost more than my first car. Elena's family arrived early, her mother fussing over details while her father glad-handed guests. I watched from a side room, adjusting my tie and trying to calm my racing heart. Frank found me there. He took one look at my face and closed the door behind him. Okay, what's going on? You look like you're about to rob a bank. Something like that. I turned to face him. I need you to trust me. What's about to happen is going to seem insane, but I promise you, it's necessary. Frank's eyes narrowed. Nick, Elena's been cheating on me, with Jake, for months. I have proof, and instead of calling off the wedding and giving her a graceful exit, I'm going to humiliate her the way she humiliated me. Frank was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. What do you need? Just stand with me, and maybe record everything on your phone. I want to remember this. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock. At 3:50, I took my position at the altar next to Reverend Patricia. Jake stood beside me, looking annoyingly handsome in his tuxedo. Ready? He whispered. More than you know. The string quartet began playing. The guests stood. The doors at the back of the ballroom opened, and everyone turned to watch the bride make her entrance. Except it wasn't Elena. Cassie stepped into the doorway, radiant in her vintage dress, holding a simple bouquet of white roses. She caught my eye and winked. The confusion rippled through the crowd like a wave. I heard gasps, murmurs, someone saying, "Is that Cassie?" Elena's mother stood up, her face a mask of shock. Elena herself was in the front row, dressed as a bridesmaid, and the expression on her face was exactly what I'd been hoping for. Absolute, uncomprehending horror. Cassie walked down the aisle alone, her chin up, a small smile playing at her lips. She was magnificent. When she reached the altar, she took my hands. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi yourself." Reverend Patricia cleared her throat. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Nicholas Rowan and Cassandra Moretti." "Wait!" Elena shot to her feet. "What the hell is going on?" The entire ballroom turned to look at her. 300 pairs of eyes, all witnessing her perfect composure, crack in real time. "Elena," her mother hissed, "sit down!" "No, that's my wedding! Nick, what are you doing?" I turned to face her, still holding Cassie's hands. "I'm marrying your sister. I thought that was obvious." "You can't. This is—" She looked around wildly, searching for support. Her eyes landed on Jake, who looked like he'd been hit with a brick. "Do something." Jake stood up slowly. "Nick, man, what's this about?" "It's about me making a better choice," I said. "You should understand that, Jake. You've always been better at choices than I am. Better at everything, really, including stealing other men's fiancés." The gasps were louder now. Elena's face went from red to white. "You don't know what you're talking about. The Mandarin Oriental. 2 months of Thursday mornings. The necklace I found in Jake's car. The one you said you lost at the gym." I smiled. "Should I keep going? Or do you want to sit down and let me marry someone who actually wants to be with me?" Elena's mother grabbed her arm and yanked her back into her seat. The room was silent, except for the sound of 300 people holding their breath. Reverend Patricia continued as if nothing had happened. "As I was saying, we are gathered here to witness the union of Nicholas and Cassandra. If anyone has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace." Silence. "Then let us continue." The ceremony was brief. I barely heard the words. I was too busy watching Elena's face, watching Jake's face, watching the entire room process what was happening. When Patricia told me to kiss the bride, I pulled Cassie close and kissed her like I meant it. Because maybe I did. The reception was chaos. Half the guests left immediately, scandalized. The other half stayed for the drama and the open bar. Elena disappeared into the bathroom with her mother and didn't come out for an hour. When she finally emerged, her eyes were red and her makeup was ruined. She found me at the bar, where I was accepting congratulations from Frank and some of the guys from work. "Nick," her voice was shaking. "We need to talk. Alone." "I don't think that's appropriate," I said. "I'm a married man now. Please." Against my better judgment, I followed her to a quiet corner. Cassie watched from across the room, her expression unreadable. "What you did was cruel," Elena said, "humiliating me in front of everyone I know. Funny, I was going to say the same thing about you sleeping with Jake. It didn't mean anything. It was just what? Just a fling? Just a few months of betraying the man you were supposed to marry?" I leaned in close. "You made me a joke, Elena. At Jake's party in front of all our friends, you told everyone you should have picked him instead of me. Do you have any idea how that felt?" Tears were streaming down her face now. "I was drunk. I didn't mean it." "Yes, you did. And you know what? You were right. You should have picked Jake, because I deserve better than someone who treats me like a consolation prize." I walked away and didn't look back. Cassie and I left the reception early, driving to her warehouse in my truck. We didn't talk much. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by a strange, giddy exhaustion. Inside, she kicked off her heels and poured us both whiskey. "Well," she said, raising her glass. "That was something. That was everything." I clinked my glass against hers. "Thank you for doing this, for being insane enough to go along with it." "Are you kidding? That was the most fun I've had in years. Did you see Elena's face? I'll never forget it." We drank in comfortable silence. Outside, the city hummed with late-night traffic. Inside, everything felt strangely peaceful. "So," Cassie said eventually, "we're married." "We are." "What now?" I looked at her, really looked at her. In the soft light of her studio, still wearing her wedding dress, she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And more than that, she was real. Honest. The kind of person who'd help a man destroy his own wedding just because it was the right thing to do. "Now," I said, "we see if we can make this work. For real." She smiled. "I think we can." And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. The video went viral within hours. Someone, probably one of Elena's horrified cousins, had filmed the entire ceremony on their phone and posted it to social media with the caption, "Groom switches brides at altar." By midnight, it had 500,000 views. By morning, it was on the local news. I woke up in Cassie's bed, my phone exploding with notifications, texts, calls, emails. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. My mother, who'd been too sick to attend the wedding, had left 6 increasingly panicked voicemails. Elena's father had sent a text that was just a string of profanities, and Jake had called 14 times. Cassie stirred beside me, her hair a dark tangle on the pillow. "Tell me that's not your phone." "Okay, it's not my phone." Liar. She grabbed her own phone from the nightstand and groaned. "Oh God, we're famous, or infamous. Is there a difference?" I scrolled through the comments on the video. Most were supportive. People loved a good revenge story. But plenty were calling me everything from a sociopath to a genius. Elena's friends were defending her, claiming I'd overreacted, that I was emotionally abusive for humiliating her so publicly. "Abusive," I muttered. "Right. Because cheating on your fiancé for months is totally healthy behavior." Cassie leaned over to read the comments. "Don't read those, people are idiots. Half of them are probably cheaters themselves." My phone rang again. This time it was Frank. "You'd better get down to the office," he said without preamble. "We've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The kind where Jake Carter is in our parking lot screaming at anyone who'll listen about how you're a psychopath who stole his girl." I sat up. "His girl?" "His words, not mine. You want me to call the cops?" "No. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Cassie was already getting dressed. "I'm coming with you." "You don't have to." "Nick, we're in this together now, for better or worse, remember? Those were literally the vows we just took." She had a point. We arrived at the office to find Jake's BMW parked sideways across 2 spaces, and Jake himself pacing in front of the building like a caged animal. He'd clearly not slept. His hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled, and he had the manic energy of someone who'd spent the night drinking and plotting revenge. When he saw me, his face contorted with rage. "You son of a bastard." "Good morning to you too, Jake. You humiliated her. You humiliated both of us, in front of everyone." I walked past him toward the office entrance, Cassie beside me. "Funny, I seem to remember you two humiliating me first. The Mandarin Oriental ring any bells?" He grabbed my arm, spinning me around. "That was different." "How?" "It just was. Elena and we have something real. You were just in the way." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity of the man, acting like he was the victim in this scenario, was almost impressive. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You slept with my fiancée for months behind my back, and I'm the bad guy for marrying her sister instead. You don't love Cassie. This is just revenge." Cassie stepped forward. "You don't know anything about what Nick feels. And even if this started as revenge, so what? Elena deserved it. You both did." Jake's eyes narrowed. "You're just like her, aren't you? A manipulative bastard who—" I hit him. Not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to shut him up. He stumbled backward, hand flying to his jaw, eyes wide with shock. "Don't," I said quietly. "Talk about my wife that way. Frank appeared in the doorway, along with two of our construction crew, both large men who'd worked with us for years. "Everything okay out here, Nick?" "Fine. Jake was just leaving." Jake looked at me, then at Frank and the crew, then at Cassie. Whatever he saw in our faces made him reconsider whatever he'd been planning. He backed toward his car, pointing at me. "This isn't over," he said. "Elena's going to sue you for emotional distress. We both are. Looking forward to it. My lawyer will love the publicity." He got in his BMW and peeled out of the parking lot, tires squealing. Frank clapped me on the shoulder. "Well, that was entertaining. You okay?" "Never better." Inside the office, I made coffee while Cassie examined the framed photos on my desk, mostly buildings I'd worked on, a few of me and Frank at job sites. She picked up one of Elena and me from last year, both of us smiling at some charity event. "You should get rid of this," she said, "already planning on it." My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. "Mr. Rowan? This is Detective Sarah Avery with the Boston Police. I need to ask you some questions about an incident involving Elena Moretti and Jake Carter." My stomach dropped. "What kind of incident?" "Ms. Moretti has filed a report claiming you've been harassing her. Threatening messages, stalking, that sort of thing. I'd like you to come down to the station and give a statement." I looked at Cassie, who'd gone pale. "When?" "Today would be good. Say, 2:00? "I'll be there." I hung up and explained the situation to Cassie and Frank. Frank immediately called our company lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen who'd helped us with contracts and zoning issues. Within an hour, she was at the office, reviewing everything I had: the photos of Elena and Jake, the timeline of their affair, the necklace I'd found. "This is good," Patricia said, making notes. "You have evidence of the affair. That establishes motive for your actions at the wedding, and you haven't actually done anything illegal. Marrying someone else isn't harassment." "What about the punch? I hit Jake this morning." Patricia sighed. "That's assault, but if he doesn't press charges, it's not an issue. Did anyone else see it?" "Frank, Cassie, two of our crew. All people who'll say he provoked you." "Okay, here's what we do. You go to the police station, you're completely honest about everything, and you let me do the talking if things get complicated. Don't volunteer information, don't get emotional, and for God's sake, don't mention hitting Jake unless they ask directly." At 2:00, I walked into the police station with Patricia beside me. Detective Avery turned out to be a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a skeptical expression. She led us to an interview room and sat across from me, a file folder in front of her. "Mr. Rowan, thank you for coming in. I want to be clear. You're not under arrest. This is just a conversation." "I understand." "Ms. Moretti claims you've been sending her threatening messages since the wedding yesterday. She also claims you've been following her and that you assaulted Mr. Carter this morning. Can you respond to those allegations?" "I haven't sent Elena any messages. I haven't contacted her at all since the wedding. As for Jake, he came to my office this morning, screaming at me in the parking lot. When he called my wife a derogatory name, I hit him. Once, that's it." Detective Avery made notes. "Can you prove you haven't been messaging Ms. Moretti?" I handed her my phone. "Check it yourself. No texts, no calls, no emails to Elena since before the wedding." She scrolled through my phone for several minutes, then handed it back. "What about the assault on Mr. Carter?" "He grabbed me first. I have witnesses." "And the wedding? Ms. Moretti claims you deliberately humiliated her as part of a harassment campaign." Patricia leaned forward. "Detective, my client discovered his fiancée was having an affair with his best man. Rather than call off the wedding, he chose to marry her sister instead. Unconventional? Yes. Illegal? No. Ms. Moretti is embarrassed, and she's lashing out." Detective Avery studied me for a long moment. Then she closed her file. "Mr. Rowan, I'm going to be honest with you. I've seen the video. Half the department has seen the video. What you did was cold, but it wasn't criminal. Ms. Moretti doesn't have a case for harassment, and Mr. Carter hasn't filed a complaint about the assault. but I'm going to give you some advice. Stay away from both of them. Don't engage, don't respond, don't give them ammunition, because if this escalates, someone's going to end up in real trouble. Understood. Good. Now get out of my station. I've got actual crimes to investigate. Outside, Patricia gave me a satisfied smile. That went well. Avery's smart. She knows a vindictive ex when she sees one. But she's right about staying away from Elena and Jake. No more parking lot confrontations. Agreed. That evening, Cassie and I ordered takeout and ate it sitting on the floor of her studio, surrounded by half-finished paintings and the detritus of our sudden marriage. It felt surreal, like we were playing house in someone else's life. So, Cassie said, twirling lo mein on her chopsticks, we're married, you punched your ex-best friend, and my sister thinks you're a stalker. How's married life treating you? Better than expected, honestly. She laughed. Same. Although I have to admit, I didn't think this through. Where are you going to live? This place is barely big enough for me and my paintings. I've been thinking about that. My lease is up next month anyway. I could find a new place, something bigger, or... I hesitated. We could find a place together, if you want. Cassie set down her food. You mean like a real marriage? Not just a revenge plot that got out of hand? Yeah, like a real marriage. She was quiet for a moment, studying my face. You know what's crazy? I think I'd like that. You're kind of growing on me, Nick Rowan. The feeling's mutual. We spent the next few days in a strange bubble, ignoring the outside world while we figured out how to be married to each other. Cassie taught me about art, how to see the structure in a painting, the way light and shadow created depth. I taught her about engineering, how buildings stood up, how forces distributed through steel and concrete. We were good together, easy. It surprised both of us. But the outside world wouldn't stay away forever. 3 days after the wedding, Elena's PR firm released a statement. It was posted on their website and sent to every major media outlet in Boston. Elena Moretti has been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into allegations of professional misconduct. We take these matters seriously and are committed to maintaining the highest ethical standards. I read it twice, confused. Professional misconduct? What does that mean? Cassie looked over my shoulder. Oh my God. Someone must have reported her for something. But what? The answer came 2 hours later, in the form of an email from an anonymous sender. It contained a series of screenshots, emails between Elena and Jake, discussing confidential information about my company's biggest project. They'd been planning to leak details to a competitor, sabotaging our bid in exchange for a kickback to Jake's firm. Holy shit, I breathed. They were trying to destroy my business. Cassie read over my shoulder, her face darkening. That absolute bastard. It wasn't enough to cheat on you. She had to try to ruin you professionally too? I forwarded the emails to Patricia Chen and Frank. Within an hour, Patricia called back. Nick, this is gold. If these emails are real, and I have no reason to think they're not, Elena and Jake committed corporate espionage. You can sue them for damages, and Elena's firm will almost certainly fire her to avoid liability. Who sent them? I don't know, but whoever it is, they're on your side. I had my suspicions. Someone inside Elena's firm, maybe. Someone who'd been watching her get away with things for too long and saw an opportunity to take her down. Or maybe it was Detective Avery, who'd seemed sympathetic during our interview. Either way, the tide was turning. That night, Jake called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. What do you want, Jake? You need to stop this story. His voice was tight with panic. The emails, the investigation, if this gets out, I'll lose my job. Elena will lose hers. We'll be blacklisted. Sounds like a personal problem. Nick, please, I know I screwed up. We both did. But this is too far. People make mistakes. Mistakes? I laughed. Jake, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. multiple choices over several months. You chose to sleep with my fiancée. You chose to help her sabotage my business. And now you're facing consequences. Welcome to adulthood. If you do this, I'll tell everyone the truth about the wedding. That you only married Cassie to hurt Elena. That it's all fake. Go ahead. I don't care what people think anymore, do you? Silence. That's what I thought. Lose my number, Jake. I hung up and blocked him. Cassie wrapped her arms around me from behind. You okay? Yeah, I think I am. And I was. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I was winning. Not just surviving, but actually winning. The game had changed, and I was just getting started. Elena's world collapsed in stages, each one more satisfying than the last. First came the firing. Her PR firm, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal, terminated her employment, effective immediately, and released a statement about their zero-tolerance policy for ethical violations. The press ate it up. Elena Moretti, the woman who'd built her career on managing other people's reputations, couldn't manage her own. Then came the lawsuits. My company sued both Elena and Jake for corporate espionage and attempted sabotage, seeking damages in the mid-six figures. Patricia Chen filed the paperwork with obvious glee, telling me it was the most clear-cut case she'd seen in years. They documented everything, she said, spreading the evidence across her desk. Every email, every conversation about stealing your bid. It's like they wanted to get caught. Arrogance, I said. They never thought anyone would find out. Jake's firm suspended him pending their own investigation. His social media went dark. The finance bros who'd always surrounded him suddenly had other places to be. Turns out, loyalty is expensive when your golden boy becomes a liability. But Elena wasn't going down quietly. 2 weeks after the wedding, she showed up at Cassie's warehouse at 11 o'clock at night, pounding on the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard it. Cassie grabbed my arm. Don't answer it. She's not going to leave. Then call the police. But I was curious. I wanted to see what Elena had become, what desperation looked like on someone who'd always been so composed. I pulled on jeans and went downstairs, Cassie following despite her better judgment. I opened the door to find Elena looking like she'd aged 5 years in 2 weeks. Her hair was unwashed, her makeup smeared, her designer clothes wrinkled. She smelled like wine and desperation. Nick, her voice cracked. Please, I need to talk to you. It's 11 at night, Elena. Go home. I don't have a home. I'm staying at my parents' house, in my childhood bedroom, like a failure. She tried to push past me, but I blocked the doorway. Please, just 5 minutes. Cassie appeared behind me. He said, go home, Elena. Elena's eyes focused on her sister with pure hatred. You stole my life. I stole your life? That's rich. You were too busy screwing Jake to notice you had a life. This is your fault. You've always been jealous of me. Jealous? Cassie laughed. Of what? Your fake friends? Your soulless job? The fiancé you cheated on? Elena lunged forward, but I caught her. She struggled in my grip, screaming incoherently, all her polish and poise gone. This was Elena Moretti unfiltered, entitled, vicious, and completely unable to accept responsibility for her own actions. Let me go. Not until you calm down. I'll sue you. Both of you. I'll tell everyone what you did. What I did? I released her, stepping back. Elena, I didn't do anything except refuse to marry a cheater. Everything else, losing your job, the lawsuit, Jake abandoning you, that's all consequences of your own choices. She stared at me, chest heaving. I loved you. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me. The reliable guy who'd give you stability while you had your fun with Jake. But you can't have both. You have to choose. I choose you. Too late. I'm married to your sister. And honestly, it's the best decision I've ever made. Cassie took my hand and Elena's face crumpled. She sank to her knees on the concrete floor, sobbing. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt sad. "Elena," Cassie said quietly, "you need to go. Get some therapy. Fix yourself. But leave us alone." We watched her leave, stumbling to her car and driving away too fast. I called Detective Avery and reported the incident, just in case. She promised to send a patrol car by Elena's parents' house to make sure she got home safely. "This is going to get worse before it gets better," Avery warned. "People like Elena don't just accept defeat. They escalate." She was right. 3 days later, someone slashed the tires on my truck while it was parked outside the office. No cameras, no witnesses, but I knew it was Jake. He'd always been the type to retaliate when he felt wronged, and right now, he felt very wronged indeed. Frank wanted to call the police, but I had a better idea. "Let me handle it," I said. That night, I drove to Jake's apartment building, a high-rise in the seaport with views of the harbor and rent that cost more than most people's mortgages. I knew his schedule. Tuesday nights, he had drinks with clients until at least 10. That gave me plenty of time. I didn't break in. I didn't vandalize anything. I simply stood in the lobby and waited for residents to come and go, asking each one if they'd heard about Jake Carter, the guy in 4B who'd been sleeping with his best friend's fiancée and trying to sabotage his business. By the time Jake got home at 10:30, the entire building knew his story. I watched from across the street as he walked through the lobby and felt the eyes on him, the judgment. He moved faster, shoulders hunched, the alpha male reduced to a social pariah. Cassie was waiting when I got back to the warehouse. "Where have you been?" "Spreading the gospel according to Nick." She raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Meaning Jake's neighbors now know exactly who he is. Let's see how long his fancy apartment stays fancy when everyone in the building hates him." "That's diabolical." "Thank you." She kissed me. "I'm starting to really like this version of you." "The vengeful version?" "The version that doesn't let people walk all over him." We were finding our rhythm, Cassie and me. The marriage that had started as revenge was becoming something real. We'd moved into a new apartment together, a loft in Cambridge with space for her paintings and my drafting table. We cooked together, laughed together, stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. It wasn't what I'd planned, but it was better. Meanwhile, Elena and Jake's lives continued their downward spiral. Jake's firm fired him after their investigation confirmed his involvement in the corporate espionage. Without his job, he couldn't afford his expensive apartment. He moved back in with his parents in Quincy, a humiliating regression for a man who'd spent his adult life defining himself by his success. Elena tried to find work, but her reputation was toxic. Every PR firm in Boston had heard the story. Some had seen the video. Nobody wanted to hire the woman who'd become a cautionary tale about mixing personal and professional life. She started drinking. Heavily. I heard about it through Cassie, who heard about it from their mother. Elena would show up at family dinners drunk, ranting about how we'd ruined her life, how it wasn't fair, how she deserved better. "She's not wrong about deserving better," Cassie said one night, curled up beside me on the couch. "But she's the one who threw it away." "Do you feel bad for her?" "Sometimes. She's my sister. But then I remember what she did to you, what she tried to do to your business, and I get over it. You're a better person than I am. I don't feel bad at all." "That's because you're still angry. Give it time. Eventually, you'll just feel nothing, and that's when you'll know you've moved on." She was probably right, but I wasn't ready to move on yet. Not until Elena and Jake had paid for everything they'd done. The opportunity came a month after the wedding, at a charity gala I'd been invited to by one of our biggest clients. It was a black tie affair at the Boston Harbor Hotel, full of the city's elite, developers, politicians, old money families. Normally I'd have skipped it, but Cassie wanted to go, and I figured it might be good for business. What I didn't expect was for Elena and Jake to be there. They were at a table in the back, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Elena wore a dress that had probably cost a fortune but looked cheap on her now, like she'd lost weight, and it didn't fit right. Jake was in a rental tux, the kind you could tell wasn't his because it didn't quite fit his shoulders. They saw us the moment we walked in. Elena's face went white. Jake's went red. "Ignore them," Cassie whispered, taking my arm. "We're here to have a good time." But ignoring them became impossible when the gala's organizer, a developer named Richard Morrison, who'd worked with my firm on several projects, took the stage to introduce the evening's speakers. "Our first speaker tonight," Richard said, "is someone who's become quite famous recently, though perhaps not for the reasons he'd have chosen. Nick Rowan, founder of Rowan Engineering, is here to talk about his firm's latest project, the Harbor Green Development, a sustainable housing complex that's going to transform the waterfront." Nick? I hadn't prepared a speech. Richard had mentioned I might be called on, but I'd assumed it was just a formality. Now I was walking to the stage, very aware of 300 pairs of eyes on me, including Elena's and Jake's. I took the microphone and looked out at the crowd, and then I saw it. My chance. "Thank you, Richard," I said. "I want to talk tonight about integrity, about building things that last, about the difference between a solid foundation and something that just looks good on the surface." I clicked to the first slide in Richard's presentation, a rendering of the Harbor Green Development. This project represents everything my firm believes in: sustainable materials, ethical labor practices, transparency with our clients. It's not the flashiest building in Boston, but it's built to last. I clicked to the next slide. Unfortunately, not everyone in this industry shares those values. Some people are more interested in shortcuts, in sabotaging competitors, in stealing ideas and passing them off as their own. Elena stood up. "Nick, don't..." "A few months ago," I continued, "I discovered that confidential information about this project was being leaked to a competitor. The leak was traced back to two people, my former fiancée, who worked in PR, and my former best friend, who worked in finance. They were planning to tank my bid so his firm could profit." The room was silent. Jake was on his feet now, too, his face purple with rage. "That's slander," he shouted. "You can't prove any of that." I smiled. "Actually, I can. The emails are part of an ongoing lawsuit, but that's not the point. The point is that integrity matters, character matters, and when you build your life on lies and betrayal, eventually it all comes crashing down." I clicked to the final slide, a photo of Cassie and me at our wedding, both of us smiling. "So I want to thank my wife, Cassie, for reminding me what real partnership looks like, and I want to thank everyone here for supporting businesses that value ethics over profit. Because at the end of the day, that's what separates a building that lasts from one that crumbles." The applause was deafening. I returned to my seat, where Cassie grabbed my hand and squeezed hard. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen," she whispered. "Probably both." Elena and Jake left immediately, pushing through the crowd toward the exit. I watched them go and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just the quiet certainty that I'd won. The rest of the evening was a blur of congratulations and business cards. People wanted to work with us, wanted to be associated with the guy who'd stood up to corporate corruption and won. By the time we left, I had 3 new project proposals and a feature interview request from the Boston Globe. In the car, Cassie turned to me. "You know what you did in there, right? Gave a speech? No. You turned your personal revenge into professional triumph. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and made it your origin story. That's not just revenge, Nick. That's genius." Maybe she was right, but I wasn't done yet. There was still one more move to make, one final twist that would ensure Elena and Jake never forgot what they'd done, and I knew exactly how to do it. The Boston Globe article ran 2 weeks later with the headline, "From Betrayal to Breakthrough: How One Engineer Turned Personal Disaster into Professional Success." It was a full-page feature with photos of me and Cassie, the Harbor Green project, and, most importantly, a sidebar about corporate espionage in the construction industry that mentioned Elena and Jake by name. The article went viral. Suddenly, I was getting interview requests from national outlets, speaking invitations from industry conferences, even a call from a literary agent who wanted me to write a book about business ethics. Elena and Jake, meanwhile, became cautionary tales. Their names were permanently associated with corporate betrayal. Google them, and the first results were articles about the lawsuit, the scandal, the spectacular implosion of their careers. But I still wasn't satisfied. Because they hadn't just tried to hurt me professionally, they'd tried to destroy my personal life too. And for that, they deserved something more than just public humiliation. They deserved to watch me thrive. The Harbor Green project broke ground in October, 6 months after the wedding. It was a massive development. 200 units of affordable housing with green roofs, solar panels, and a community center. The kind of project that would define my career and help hundreds of families. The groundbreaking ceremony was a big deal, with the mayor, city councilors, and local media in attendance. I'd invited everyone who mattered, clients, colleagues, friends, and I'd made sure that Elena and Jake knew about it. I didn't invite them, but I knew they'd come anyway. They couldn't help themselves. They showed up halfway through the ceremony, standing at the back of the crowd like ghosts at a wedding. Elena looked terrible, thin, haggard, her expensive clothes hanging off her frame. Jake looked angry, his jaw tight, his hands clenched into fists. I pretended not to see them. The mayor finished his speech and handed me a ceremonial shovel. I posed for photos, breaking ground on the project that would cement my reputation. Cassie stood beside me, radiant in a blue dress, her hand on my arm. We looked like what we were, a successful couple building something meaningful together. After the ceremony, as people mingled and congratulated us, Elena approached. She moved through the crowd slowly, like she was walking through water, and stopped a few feet away from me. "Nick," she said quietly, "can we talk?" Cassie stiffened beside me, but I squeezed her hand. "It's okay." We walked away from the crowd to a corner of the construction site where the noise faded. Elena looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry." "Okay. That's it? Just okay?" "What do you want me to say, Elena? That I forgive you? That we can be friends? That's not going to happen." "I know. She looked down at her hands. "I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my family barely speaks to me. And you're thriving. You won. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about consequences. You made choices and now you're living with them." "But it's not fair. You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. You destroyed my career. I didn't destroy your career, Elena. You did. When you decided to leak confidential information to help Jake's firm. When you prioritized your affair over your integrity, I just made sure people knew about it." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I loved you. I really did." "No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me. The stable guy who'd give you a nice life while you had your fun on the side. But that's not love. That's convenience." "And you love Cassie? Really? Or is she just revenge?" I looked over at my wife, who was talking to the mayor and laughing at something he'd said. She caught my eye and smiled, and I felt something warm and real in my chest. "I love her," I said. "I didn't expect to, but I do. She's everything you're not. Honest, loyal, real. Marrying her was the best decision I ever made." Elena's face crumpled. "I hope you're happy together." "We are." She walked away, shoulders shaking with sobs. I watched her go and felt that familiar nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger. Just the quiet certainty that this chapter of my life was finally closed. Jake was waiting by the fence, smoking a cigarette. When he saw me, he flicked it away and walked over. You got what you wanted, he said. We're both destroyed. You happy now? Honestly, I don't think about you much anymore. Bullshit. This whole thing, the article, the speech, this ceremony, it's all about rubbing our faces in it. No, Jake. It's about building something meaningful. You and Elena are just footnotes in my story now. His jaw clenched. You're a self-righteous prick, you know that? Maybe. But I'm a self-righteous prick with a successful business, a wife I actually love, and a reputation that doesn't include corporate espionage. Can you say the same? He took a step toward me, fists raised, and for a moment I thought he might actually swing. But then he seemed to deflate, all the fight going out of him. This isn't over, he said weakly. Yes, it is. Go home, Jake, move on. Find a new job, a new city, a new life, because you're never going to win this fight. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. I watched him go, and this time I did feel satisfaction. Not because I'd destroyed him, but because I'd survived. I'd taken the worst betrayal of my life and turned it into something better. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur of handshakes and congratulations. By the time Cassie and I left, the sun was setting over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. You okay? She asked, driving us home. Yeah, I think I am. Elena and Jake showed up. I know. And nothing. They're done. We're done. It's over. She reached over and took my hand. Good, because I'm ready to stop living in the past and start living in the present, with you. Me too. That night we celebrated at a small Italian restaurant in the North End, just the two of us. We drank wine, ate too much pasta, and talked about the future, where we wanted to live, what projects we wanted to work on, whether we wanted kids someday. It felt normal, real, like we were just a regular couple figuring out their life together, not two people whose marriage had started as an act of revenge. Can I tell you something? Cassie said, twirling her wine glass. I'm glad Elena cheated on you. I laughed. That's a weird thing to be glad about. I know. But if she hadn't, you'd be married to her right now, and I'd be alone, and we'd both be miserable. So you're saying her betrayal was actually a gift? In a twisted way, yeah. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things. She was right. If Elena hadn't cheated, if I hadn't discovered the affair, if I hadn't made the insane decision to marry Cassie instead, none of this would have happened. I'd be trapped in a loveless marriage, probably still getting cheated on, definitely still being treated like a second choice. Instead, I had a wife I loved, a business I was proud of, and a future that actually excited me. You know what? I said, raising my glass. Here's to Elena and Jake, for being such spectacular failures that they accidentally gave me the life I was supposed to have. Cassie clinked her glass against mine. To spectacular failures. We drank, and I felt the last piece of anger and resentment finally let go. They weren't worth it anymore. They'd never been worth it. 2 months later, I heard through Frank that Jake had moved to Chicago, taking a job at a mid-level firm for half his previous salary. Elena had left Boston too, relocating to Portland to work for a small nonprofit. They'd both disappeared from social media, their online presences scrubbed clean of any mention of their previous lives. They'd been erased, and I'd barely noticed. The Harbor Green project was completed 18 months later, on schedule and under budget. It won awards for sustainable design and community impact. The mayor held a ribbon-cutting ceremony, and this time, Elena and Jake were nowhere to be seen. Cassie and I bought a house in Cambridge, a Victorian with a studio for her paintings and a home office for my work. We adopted a dog, a goofy golden retriever named Frank Jr., who had absolutely no sense of personal space, but made us laugh every day. Life was good. Better than good. It was exactly what I'd always wanted but never thought I'd have. One evening, about 2 years after the wedding, I was working late in my home office when Cassie appeared in the doorway. "Hey," she said, "come look at something." I followed her to her studio, where she'd been working on a new series of paintings. She pulled back a sheet to reveal a large canvas, a portrait of me at our wedding, looking at her with an expression I barely recognized. I looked happy, genuinely, completely happy. "Is that how you see me?" I asked. "That's how you looked at me that day, like I was the only person in the world who mattered." "You were, you are." She kissed me, and I pulled her close, breathing in the smell of paint and turpentine that always clung to her. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "The way we started? The revenge, the drama, all of it?" "No. Do you?" "Not even a little bit. I got the best revenge of all. I got you." And that, I realized, was the real ending. Not the public humiliation of Elena and Jake, not the success of my business, not even the satisfaction of watching them fail. The real ending was this: standing in my wife's studio, holding the woman I loved, building a life that was better than anything I'd imagined. Elena and Jake had tried to destroy me. Instead, they'd set me free. And I'd never been happier. Epilogue. 3 years later. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was at a job site, reviewing blueprints with my crew, when an unknown number flashed on my screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Nick Rowan?" A woman's voice, professional and slightly apologetic. "Speaking. This is Jennifer Walsh from the Boston Business Journal. I'm doing a follow-up piece on your Harbor Green project and its impact on affordable housing in the city. Do you have time for a few questions?" I did the interview standing in the March wind, talking about construction methods and community partnerships and the importance of sustainable development. It was the kind of interview I did regularly now. My firm had become known for ethical practices and innovative design, and journalists loved a good redemption story. "One last question," Jennifer said. "Your ex-fiancée, Elena Moretti, and Jake Carter, the people involved in the original scandal, have both filed for bankruptcy in the past year. Do you have any comment on that?" I paused, genuinely surprised. I hadn't thought about Elena or Jake in months, maybe longer. They'd become background noise in my life, irrelevant to my present or future. "I hope they find their footing," I said finally. "Everyone deserves a second chance." "That's very gracious of you. It's just the truth. What they did was wrong, but holding on to anger doesn't hurt them. It hurts me. I'd rather focus on building things than tearing people down." After the interview ended, I stood there for a moment, phone in hand, thinking about the man I'd been 3 years ago. The guy who'd been so consumed with revenge that he'd crashed his own wedding, who'd spent months plotting the downfall of 2 people who'd betrayed him. That guy was gone. In his place was someone who'd learned that the best revenge wasn't destruction, it was building something better. I drove home to find Cassie in the kitchen, covered in flour and laughing at something on her phone. She'd quit teaching last year to focus on her art full-time, and her paintings were selling in galleries across New England. We were doing well, better than well. We were happy. "Hey," she said, kissing me and leaving a flower handprint on my shirt. "How was the site?" "Good. I got a call from the Business Journal. Apparently Elena and Jake both filed for bankruptcy." Cassie paused in her bread-making. "Wow. How do you feel about that?" "Honestly, I don't feel much of anything. It's been 3 years. They're just people I used to know." "Good. That's healthy." She went back to kneading dough. "Although I have to admit, there's a part of me that's glad karma caught up with them." "Karma didn't catch up with them. Their own choices did. That's the thing I've learned. You don't need to destroy people who hurt you. You just need to step back and let them destroy themselves." "Very zen of you." "I learned from the best." That evening, we had dinner with Frank and his new girlfriend, a lawyer named Patricia, who made him laugh in a way I'd never seen before. We ate Cassie's homemade bread, drank too much wine, and told stories about the early days of the firm. You know what I remember? Frank said, his arm around Patricia. The day after your wedding, when you came into the office and I thought you'd lost your mind, marrying Elena's twin sister, I figured you'd be divorced in 6 months. We all did, Patricia added. No offense. None taken, Cassie said, laughing. I thought we'd be divorced in 3 months. And now look at you, Frank said. 3 years, a house, a dog, and you still can't keep your hands off each other. I guess revenge marriages work out sometimes. It stopped being about revenge pretty quickly, I said, taking Cassie's hand. Turns out, marrying someone you actually like is a better foundation than marrying someone who looks good on paper. Later, after Frank and Patricia left, Cassie and I sat on our back porch, watching Frank Jr. chase fireflies in the yard. The evening was warm, the air full of the smell of spring flowers and possibility. Can I tell you something? Cassie said. Always. I'm pregnant. The world stopped. I turned to look at her, and she was smiling, her eyes bright with tears. You're serious? Found out this morning. I wanted to wait until we were alone to tell you. I pulled her into my arms, feeling a rush of emotions I couldn't quite name. Joy, certainly. Fear, excitement, love. So much love, it felt like my chest might explode. We're having a baby, I said, testing the words. We're having a baby. And just like that, the story shifted again. It wasn't about revenge anymore, or betrayal, or even redemption. It was about the future, the family we were building, the life we were creating together, the love that had grown from the ashes of something that should have destroyed me. Elena and Jake were footnotes now, barely remembered. The wedding that had started as revenge had become the foundation of something real and lasting. The worst betrayal of my life had led to the best thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes, I realized, the universe has a twisted sense of humor. You think you're planning revenge, but really, you're planning your future. You think you're destroying your enemies, but really, you're freeing yourself. And sometimes, just sometimes, the last laugh belongs to the guy who was always the second choice, right up until he chose himself. I looked at my wife, my home, my life, and felt nothing but gratitude. Elena should have picked Jake. Because if she had, I never would have found Cassie. I never would have built this life. I never would have learned that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's happiness. And I was the happiest I'd ever been.